Thank you so much, and thank you for being here on such a beautiful day. We are a small but perfectly formed audience. I won't speak for very long because the idea is to discuss what I've got to say, but I'm really glad to be here because this is the last lecture that I'm going to give as part of my year here, and it has given me opportunity to review quite a number of things that I've been thinking about throughout my career. So in between the inaugural lecture and this, my final one, I was exploring this with students, one theory, which is about how we might construct our future so that we go on being resilient towards the kind of challenges that we are all facing. And one such a theory has come from an Oxford economist, Kate Raworth, who has put forward the idea of donut economics, a theory which promises to shift the current generative practice when we take, make, use, and dump um, all sorts of things to a regenerative one, where we take less, we make less, we use less, and we also reuse. We are the only species on the planet to create waste. No other species does this, and we are very good at doing this. The theory also promotes a shift from the current divisive practice of wealth being retained in the hands of very few to a distributive practice in which governance, resources, and benefits are shared more equally. So this lecture offered me the opportunity to wrap up a year of thinking, and I have done this preparation to allow me to focus on demonstrating how theory and practice are informing each other and how the ideas about more resilient future are beginning to spread both through evolving theories, but also through prototyping. So my inaugural lecture was very much about theory and practice. Why do we have so much theory about how we should live better with greater justice, both social and environmental, and why can't we implement it? What is the barrier in practice? I have based all of that I'm about to share with you on the lived experience I have gained as a practicing architect and urban designer and part-time academic. The focus of the talk is on the resilience of very small places, market towns, villages, and neighborhoods, because these are the building blocks of a wider society. And if the building blocks are not resilient, then the wider society can't possibly be resilient either. And just for the clarity of definition, resilient places are the definition is that a resilient place is a community or area that can withstand and adapt the changes, including natural and human-made hazards. Resilience is a system that requires some redundancy, as optimizing systems break quickly. So optimized systems that we have now, just-in-time systems, break down very quickly when encountering challenges. So almost all of my urban design work has been placed in Yorkshire, which has some 225 market towns and villages. You can see them, little dots here. I worked with but a handful of them, but have learned a great deal from the many communities, diverse stakeholders, and hundreds of individuals involved in the process. So although I have named the presentation Distinctive Futures, Strategies in Resilience, these personal reflections are grounded in what I have observed to be universal and transferable patterns modified to the particular time and place. I believe that storytelling is the most interesting form of communication, so I have structured the lecture in 4 very brief sections, 3 stories and 1 epilogue. Before we get to the stories, just want to say that all 3 stories are about places that were failing economically. When economic resilience of a place implodes, it is extremely difficult to bring them to bring those places back. In UK, we have about 7 decades of trying to regenerate places that lost the textile, steel, and mining industries. Many even sustained investments, many even very sustained investments failed to arrest the decline. These observations did not escape the policymakers, and in a very brief period of 10 years, known as the Urban Renaissance, it was about between 1999 and 2010, the then Labour Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott set up regional development agencies, allowing regional decisions to be made about priorities and methods of developing and regenerating. This was a period of most progressive thinking on placemaking within my lifetime, and the Yorkshire Forward RDA was the most progressive of them all. We had a very good bunch of people in charge of this big investment. So my strategic visions were commissioned for regenerating Yorkshire settlements. Many strategic visions were commissioned at the time. After some false starts, drunk on the huge quantities of development, budgets and intentions, there were some false starts. At the time, Prescott and many others believed that a wow factor was a regeneration tool, and they spent a lot of money on big name consultants and extreme visions, such as Barnsley as the hilltop town and a wholesale redevelopment of Bradford city centre. As this started to move into implementation stage, the directors of the Renaissance programme decided that they wanted to understand more about the resilience of a place and how it really works and how it can be supported to flourish beyond the period of investment. So there was a little bit of turning and rethinking. And at that point, they invited a local Leeds-based firm, which was our firm, Bauman Lyons Architects, to research what regeneration approaches, have worked and sustained small towns in UK. And after developing a taxonomy of market towns based on the roles within the hinterland, we identified a handful of towns that have successfully reinvented themselves. They became the focus of our research, and I will tell you 3 of these research stories. The first one is about Hay-on-Wye, the smallest of the settlements in my research. It's a tiny town of some 1,450 residents with a maze of narrow ancient streets bordering on the spectacular landscape of Bacon's National Park and the Black Mountains. Economy was traditionally based on the sheep farming and services to travelling tradesmen and visitors. Life was very hard, and most people had 2 jobs to make ends meet. In 1961, the entrepreneur Richard Booth, who inherited his uncle's castle in the town, returned from his Oxford studies and opened the first second-hand bookshop in Hay, convinced that a town full of bookstores would be an international attraction. He considered the location to be ideal for international trade, since the town is halfway between Bristol and Birmingham on the way to Ireland and sufficiently isolated to protect from the dominance of London. He was passionate about making a competitive countryside business. Very driven. His private enterprise and his passion for books had driven the growth in the number of shops, and many other people who initially worked for him and learned the trade from him opened their own bookshops. And by the late 1970s, Hay had become the world's first official book town with over 30 bookshops. Well, quite extraordinary, the range of them and the varieties. There are now almost 40 bookshops in the town, and between them, they employ approximately 100 staff. Richard Booth was awarded MBE in 2004 and eventually sold his bookshop for about £1 million. And the town has inspired the international book town movement. Around 40 semi-official book towns now exist around the world, with most concentrated in Europe, Southeast Asia, and North America and Australia. And very small. In 1988, piggybacking on the success of the book, another entrepreneur, Norman Florence, he was educated in Jesus College in Cambridge, ran the first Hay Literature Festival, originally attended mainly by the family and friends. Norman Florence, his great ambition was to create something of excellence at home in a very small place, which would nevertheless be recognized worldwide. Another ambitious individual. So now it is in its 37th year, and the festival is branded the Hay Festival of Wales, and it attracts some 200 visitors over its 11 days even in very inclement weather. Doesn't seem to matter. It transferred online during 2 years of COVID-19 epidemic and is back again, and now continues to have online as well as on in-place presence. So it's actually grown since COVID. The festival also has a big social and environmental agendas, hugely inclusive and putting sustainability on the international agenda through their own behaviors, but also sustainability focus in how they program the events, bringing latest ideas and activists into this tiny town. And they track, the festival tracks its impacts and extends this its ambition year by year. It has received multiple awards, including the status of Festival of Sanctuary, bestowed on them by Refugee City of Sanctuary, and Princess of Asteria Award from Spain for Communication and Humanities in 2020. Just as the book Town, the festival now supports international network of Hay. They all called Hay festivals, which is a testimony to the ambition of Norman Florence, which he has clearly fulfilled. And the positive impact on the economy of a small town is measurable. Bookshops have regenerated buildings that had long been neglected. The town attracts both practicing and retired professionals, bringing with them greater spending power. A range of arts and antiquarian businesses have opened up, and Hay now has 17 restaurants, and the town has over 500,000 of tourists a year. The downside is rising property prices, but this is kept at bay by the seasonal nature of the peak season. The Booktown initiative survived Robert Booth. It's turning out to be resilient. Robert Booth, who crowned himself as the king of Hay, it went to his head a little bit like it does people who experience power. And the village riot or revolt that this provoked. It also survived his retirement. The festival likewise survived COVID-19 and the departure of Peter Florence as its original director, and has been embraced by young people on TikTok who now sponsors the festival. It's very, very popular with young people who are reading. So this was the first story of resilience of the smallest settlement that I've ever worked with. The second story is that in Yorkshire, it's Hebden Bridge. It is a market town in Calderdale in West Yorkshire with a population of 4,500. So it's about 3 times as big as Hay-on-Wye. Still very small. As England was industrializing in the 19th century, its location surrounded by steep hills and fast-flowing streams and access to major wool markets made the town ideal for water-powered weaving mills. And the town developed rapidly throughout 19th and 20th centuries and became known as the trouser town because of the large amount of clothing manufacturing. The town was vibrant, buzzing, and black with soot, bellowing from dozens of chimneys that dominated the sky. It's hard to imagine now how dirty it was. But after World War II came the decline of the textile industry in Yorkshire, primarily because of the intense competition from cheaper overseas imports, particularly from countries like India, which led to a significant drop in demand for local produce textiles, resulting in widespread mill closures, job losses, and it was really throughout the whole region. So in the early 60s, the town was rapidly declining, still black with soot, dominated by rumbling lorries that were going right through the center because M62 was not yet opened. Young people were leaving in droves and not returning, and half of the abandoned houses were condemned as units for habitation. Most Calderdale Valley became depopulated, neglected, and miserable. The council of the day commenced a program of clearance under the policy of urban renewal, and as we now know, with the benefit of hindsight, an indiscriminate demolition that ripped up the very tight vernacular urban fabric of the town. They were just demolition, almost indiscriminately. So all resilience seemed to have been lost. But seemed is the key word here, because in fact, 2 things happened: to arrest and then reverse this decline. Both were community-led and motivated by commitment to the place. The first was that a group of young people who did want to stay decided to act. So there were some people, young people, who had a look around and were heartbroken and decided that this has to stop. They started with a whole load of very small actions, working pretty much every Sunday and all Sundays, usually in the morning, joined by the older people in the town who were keen to help and who contributed skills and the know-how and the knowledge of the place. They prioritized initiatives that would bring the biggest impacts. So they were planting trees and forests, they were improving public realm, and cleaning up the river, which was really absolutely key because the river was almost invisible with all the debris. They also ran a campaign to publicize the assets that the town had to offer to the rest of the community, with public talks and slides and historic lectures. As the demolition program continued and many mills were accidentally burned, they formed called it a civic trust and started campaigning against demolition, saving some very important buildings and slowly reversing the trend towards retention and refurbishment, an option enabled by the 1968 Act. So no, we do need policy to work in tandem with the voices of the people. The two together are the best option for resilience. But a second thing happened also in tandem with the people, young people staying. As the people were leaving in droves, the hippies moved in. They came in pursuit of different values and different lifestyles, attracted by empty properties and the beautiful, really beautiful location. They were young, interesting and creative people, and they brought with them a host of new ideas and optimism about the future. They squatted empty buildings and pioneered a buzz that attracted larger numbers of young people from Manchester and from Leeds to follow. And those in turn brought their own cultural contributions, helping to build the image of Hebden Bridge as a somewhat off-the-beat artistic and creative centre and the lesbian capital of the UK. This is the day, to this day, Hebden Bridge has a very large LGBTQ plus community. And these two groups, the pioneering young residents wanting to stay and make the place well again, and the young newcomers who came looking for a better life, went on to set up many campaigns, festivals, and development trust, which gradually transformed the town. In 1999, a community campaign called Friends of the Picture House saved the cinema from being demolished. That cinema has now become one of the major community spaces, very, very lively arts centre in the town. This was followed in early noughties with a major transformation of the public realm created by by removing all of the traffic from the centre of the town. This was a community decision to prioritise regeneration, the funding from the regeneration from Yorkshire Forward to achieve this improvement. And the effect is truly transformative. The place is unrecognisable. This goes on, so this just goes on as the confidence of the community increased. In 2008, Hebden Bridge Town Hall community started a charity to establish a new asset transfer of the former council offices and the town hall into community ownership. It was one of the earliest community transfers that we had in UK. They raised the money, appointed my firm as the architects, and the new refurbished and greatly extended town hall was opened in summer 2012 under community governance. It now offers a range of spaces for community activities, meetings and celebrations, 35 businesses, and a hot desking facility, an affordable cafe, and hosts a wide range of special events, festivals and exhibitions. And most importantly, it offers the only south-facing public space on the riverside in the town centre. They just didn't have one before, but this very river that gave birth to the town and has provided so much work and enjoyment has also lashed out in a major flood in 2015. It delivered one of the greatest disasters in the town. The event became a most extraordinary test of resilience as the Asian community came together in the kitchens of the town hall to utilize the tradition of community eating and cooking, and they provided for all those who needed shelter. They served over 20,000 hot drinks, 4,000 free hot meals, managed cleaning supplies, food distribution, set up center database for deploying 700 volunteers, offered mobile phone charging, organized space to advise and also for quiet reflection. People were very traumatized and much more, and all of them from a community-owned town hall. And in 2016, so a year later, I received this letter or this email from one of the trustees who was our client. It is the best letter I ever had from a client, and I'm just going to read it out. You might have seen some recent floods in Hebden Bridge in the media, and how the town hall, as the only public building not to be affected, became the hub of a relief operation. Without the town hall, there would have been incredible suffering in the town, and even though the building has been extremely successful since it opened, this must have been its finest hour. So I just wanted to say thank you for making it so flood-proof. It worked. It was very nice, and he didn't have to write this note, but it was very nice to receive it. And there is no stopping this community. In 2014, they set up another organization, Valley Community Land Trust. It's a member-led community benefit society with charitable status, established to help to address and meet housing needs in Calderdale. We are now working with them to provide new affordable apartments for young people. So Hembridge is a story of resilience, driven by the resilient residents themselves, motivated by the distinctive offer of a place and also its hinterland. The two are very connected, the urban and the hinterland and the rural. So on to the story number 3, which is very different altogether. Dewsbury is a West Yorkshire, also in West Yorkshire, is a bigger settlement. It's at 65,000 residents, biggest settlement in the 3 stories. Our approach to the regeneration strategy for the Dewsbury town centre and our work there was greatly influenced by what we have learned about resilience in the previous 2 cases. But first, let me tell you about how resilience was lost here in the first place over 7 decades of regeneration policies. The story is based on Dewsbury, but its experience is universal in towns and neighbourhoods all over UK. So very quickly, just to show you. So it starts like this. In the 60s, a ring road was built, demolishing a great deal of the fabric of a town and separating the centre from the key institutions which are required for resilience, such as the cathedral and the station, shown here with red arrows, and the adjoining neighbourhoods where people live and were used to walk to the market and to the many jobs that the centre offered. So the green arrows. So people used to work used to live very close to the centre and were separated by 6 lanes of traffic. Then in the 70s, some shopping malls were built to sell increasingly globalized cheap goods, which slowly replaced the independent shops that at the time lined all the streets. And the market, which boasted in Dewsbury some 300 stalls, it's supposed to be the biggest town market in UK. The brownfield demolished sites created in the process of building the ring road in the city centre were prioritised for large sheds for supermarkets, which further undermined the independent retail offer and siphoned off the money that used to just circulate within the community into faraway and invisible pockets of landowners and global supply chains. These are the orange arrows. The town that boasts 225 listed buildings, all made to human scale with beautiful local stone, many of which were becoming empty, also acquired some high-rise, flat-roofed brick offices, which were out of keeping with the place in every possible manner, which was apparent to all, with maybe the exception of the owners, the architects who agreed to design it, and the politicians who approved it. So just in case you can't imagine it, who it is, just to make this point, quite a number of these were built in the centre. And on the outer edge of a ring road, demolition sites became available and accessible by car for retail development modelled on the US urban topology, large floor plates, low-rise sheds. And the final death knell were the large brownfield sites used as ground level car parks to receive the new retail sheds now accessible from the ring road to the whole hinterland without any footpaths or connection back into the city center. So this is a story of some destruction. And now, most people who visiting Dewsbury, this is the experience that they have passing through it. Whether you live here or just passing through, this is what you see. So the effect of successive trial and error growth-focused regeneration policies is what is the problem with regeneration policies, that you can only do them once. You get it built and then you test whether it's effective or not. It's very difficult to predict how they're going to work. So this was very much trial and error. And within a single generation, people in the town are looking at what they have now and long for what they remember they used to have in their youth. And this is the town that we found when we got involved. And the progressive decline was unstoppable. For me, it was symbolized by one of the most visible landmarks of the town. It is the pinnacle of the Pioneer House. It was so called because it was a pioneer of the cooperative movement. The pinnacle has been lopsided for years and years. And at the time we started the work with Dewsbury, it was visible from one of the main gateways into the town, and nobody bothered to straighten it up. And there was generally a feeling of it was a symbol of a shame that was felt by all 63,000 people at the decline of a place. All the resilience practically was gone, broken by the successive failures of regeneration strategies. Most of the residents did not sign up to any of those. And this is roughly the story of many places in England at the time. So this is where my team came in, appointed by Cakel's Council and the Regeneration Development Agency in late notice to produce one more regeneration strategy. It was another RDA project, so there was a lot of goodwill and a good stretch of time to re-examine current policies and to develop meaningful engagement with people of Dewsbury to make sure that they actually owned their own strategy. So we started one of the most in-depth engagements with direct conversations with people on the street. We called it Picture and Story. We literally just went on the streets for about 2 months. We interviewed over 200 people. We asked them to write a single thing, most important thing, on a board. We then had a huge exhibition, and more people started adding to it, because once you see your colleagues and your neighbors participating this way, other people join in as well. So it was a very successful first step. We found a lot of things that repeated after that. We also had some 20 workshops with all the stakeholders from all sectors that have contributed that had a contribution to make to the city. On the left are public institutions, on the right are the market traders. Usually they were mixed in, but some of them asked for extra workshops. And we had great many workshops with children up to the age of 11. It was absolutely delightful. They had so many ideas. And from 11 till 18, it was really painful, and we didn't really want to be there, but they still had some ideas. So most importantly, we teamed up with local artists who shared some of them, who just basically shared some of our fees with them to develop 6 pop-up events. And we were designed a little bit like the Hebden Bridge example. It was to showcase and draw attention to the assets of a town. Each of the pop-ups was a collaboration, different collaborations, some with the bakers, some with the with the town council, some with market holders. It was very difficult to engage Asian women, for example. The only way we found of doing this is by having sewing workshops, and that allowed them to come out of the houses and participate in an all-day sewing workshop. So we use different methods, also working with fashion students to reimagine this very horrific bridge. I put this photograph in because Cambridge has got even worse bridge than this, which does need to be reimagined. And then the most impactful of the pop-ups was a candlelit fish and chip dinner for 100 people. It was a November night in an open market. It was supposed to last 1 hour. There was no alcohol, it was just tea. But people stayed for almost 4 hours, and all ward members came. All 9 ward members were there. First time we managed to get them all together, speaking with the residents about what has to be done. And the strategy designed to stitch the economy. So we then developed this strategy together with the residents, designed to stitch the economic, social, and physical fabric of the town, and was published. It included animation film, and it featured children and other residents presenting the ideas and the proposed project. A mix of developing active transport routes, green spaces, moving the college into the city centre, expanding the market, refurbishing the arcades, creating an innovation center, and many other projects. But one other feature, which we now since then been always including in any strategy, was a whole host of small so-called stepping stones projects, so that the whole strategy doesn't just die with the end of a process before the funding flows, but you can actually do things, small things towards it. And we also trained 40 residents to form the town team and to govern, in terms of how to assess projects, how to present to planning committees, how to deal with money and funding applications, and how to govern. So we left behind 40 empowered town team members. It was as resilient an approach as we have ever been able to be involved in. And the wonderful thing about passage of time in development terms, because development takes a long time, is that it allows you to learn not only from what others have done, but also about what you have done yourself. And I have been tracking all the regeneration strategies that we have been involved in and benefit hugely from the learning. So going back into Dewsbury, I am amazed to see, really amazed, because after 12 years, it is possible to draw some conclusions. Dewsbury strategy was called Town Centre for 2035. Since the time it was completed, in 2012, the report was completed, many things happened. Things like austerity that followed the 2008 credit crunch, climate change emergency, Brexit, COVID, first term of Trump, disintegration of the Tory party, invasion of Ukraine, destruction of Gaza, in full sight of the world, generative AI integrated into everyday life, second term of Trump, accompanied by the rise of extreme right pretty much everywhere, and the rules of democracy caught up in the existential whirlwind. And all this in a period of just 12 years of a 25-year-long strategy. But the people of Dewsbury still want the same things that they did 12 years ago. And the ideas which we developed together are being delivered. Pioneer House is now restored. Its pinnacle is now straightened, and the houses, the skills college that we collectively decided should be moved into the center of the town from the outskirts to bring young people into the town. And in 2023, there's another major consultancy. It's true that the public sector wastes some money. I mean, the money spent on consultancies to gather the same information that was gathered 10 years later is extraordinary. The institution memories are very short. People want to do things again. But they secured further funding from government and implement 10 projects in the centre, and 9 out of those 10 projects are the ones that we identified in the original strategy. So the resilience returns to the town built on the unique assets of the place and on the community itself. And because I just feel a little bit generous, I want to say that one of the WOW projects did actually get built in the Bradford, the Mirror Pool, which is a hugely successful project and a turning point in the regeneration of the city, which, however, is now bankrupt. The city is bankrupt. So the question remains, how resilient this will be long term. But then no progressive movement has ever gone in a straight line. It's quite well known that we have to go back and forth. While the Year of Culture is on, I'm sure the pool will be operational. We'll have to see what happens afterwards. So now that you have heard the 3 stories, I would like to offer some reflections on what I have learned from them about place resilience and about the possible direction of travel. With the increasing frequency of environmental disasters, much research is being done on how to increase our resilience. After the Hurricane Sandy in 29th of October 2012, in New York, many detailed studies revealed that the neighborhoods that did the best at managing the first response and the subsequent long-term recovery were those with strong social capital and well-networked, trusted local institutions and organizations. This understanding was reinforced and amplified many times over during COVID-19 epidemic. We are really now have a very different understanding of the role of strong communities. In all our case studies, we found that the resilience of a place was supported by strong heritage, attractive hinterland, very active local entrepreneurs who were able to inspire and generate significant involvement by other local people and organizations. They were then able to develop collaborative relationships with significant organizations, such as the local authorities. Through our work, we identified two types of distinctiveness. One that we called co-distinctiveness, that consists of physical features of a town and its hinterland. These are slow to change, but are also the foundation of the uniqueness of a place. The second type was we call dynamic distinctiveness, which relates to human enterprise and all human activities. These are elements that create change, allow places to be reimagined and to evolve. Two different types of distinctness. The current project I'm involved with, two projects are testing whether the kind of long-term resilience that all communities need now can be developed in places that don't have a strong core distinctiveness and must rely largely on social capital and human endeavors. And there are a couple of projects, very briefly. The first example is a project by Urban, located in two very poor neighborhoods of Paris and led by a group of citizens, academics, who are developing a neighborhood retrofit that brings the community together and helps it to become economically, ecologically, and socially more resilient. They do so by introducing a number of facilities such as recycling stores, makers' workshops, organic cultivation, and regenerative construction methods, also training and introduction of composting, green energy generation, and circular economy, so supply chain for the neighborhood. Research carried out to assess the impact of this approach indicate that over 10 years of 10-year period, the initiative achieved 180% return on investment. So this approach is economically sound. Closer home in Birmingham, a community-led organization, Civic Square, are developing a neighborhood public square. They have acquired a site, which is an industrial site in character, but it sits within a very poor, very deprived residential neighborhood of Ladywood. The project aims to demonstrate new process and new institutions that are needed if we are to shift to a new economic model, such as envisaged by Donut Economics, of a social and environmental justice. Now, how can we become a fair, just society while also being just to the environment? The public square is conceived as a community power station and also as a working site for the whole neighborhood. So it's a new kind of center, new kind of high street, where the whole neighborhood can be developed from. Civic Square proposes a number of new institutions, such as shared access makerspace and a school for skills for transition, so that we can learn how to make, repair, recycle, and how we can do hands-on retrofitting of neighborhood homes and streets. Also, it has tool and materials libraries that will support the wider library lending and learning, and also learning across the site, designed to distribute resources and knowledge. And then, in addition to the workspaces and the teaching spaces that they're suggesting, also a collective kitchen, they also envisage a facility called Theatre of Dreams. It's a 200-seater community theatre designed to adapt to be adaptable to hold dynamic participatory hosting. It will be fully equipped for neighborhood town, for kind of town hall meetings, for local events, cultural festivals, and major conferences, annual conferences on climate justice and the new economy. All of these are designed with 3 degrees temperature rise in mind and its impact on society. So they are preparing for the next 20, 30 years. In conclusion, I would suggest that in pursuit of economic competitiveness, methods have been developed such as surveying, data gathering, and mapping, designed to systematically compare and numerically evaluate. The information so gathered informs policy making, but is in danger of leaving out the very things that make a place resilient. I understand this now, and I can measure the change this understanding brought into my own practice by looking at where I used to start the process of urban design. Usually it was something like this: a map and a study of building uses. So this is the beginning of urban analysis. But now I start in a very different place. And this is what the mapping looks like. It's a very different map. It's a map of individuals with ideas who want to make a contribution to the community. We always look to find them at the beginning. Then also the local trusted organizations, key local and regional and national institutions, which are relevant to the place. And we then start the whole process by bringing them together so that we can have a single conversation and a joint vision. Yesterday, I went to the opening of the Cambridge Room in the Crafton Centre, sponsored by this school. It already has the beginnings of a map. I think it's here. Of community organizations which are active in the city, and is hosting a space where conversations about the city can take place between the citizens, the academics, the practitioners, and the policymakers. This is the beginning of an infrastructure for a more resilient future. And it is important because of what the urbanist James Chancellor says, and I really believe that he's right. The 20th century was about getting around, but the 21st century will be about staying in a place worth staying in. And of course, the story still continues. So that's it. Finished. Thank you very much.